you want me to sit over there with you?
At least one side of the table will be right.
Yeah, this side.
Middle of it for you.
Yeah. Hey, I got a big picture here, that's all I care about. But I could stand in those, in front of those two and just hit them when they're acting up. Good, how are you?
Yeah.
Yeah, we are keeping the women on this side.
Yeah,
So I guess you're a woman.
I better move, I guess.
All right. It's up to you.
Hey, hard second.
Oh, well, it's up there. It's hard to see better.
All right, we got two chairs.
Jackie. I shall.
Mr. Leonard, I took the liberty of making name tags for everybody.
Oh, that's so nice. Alicia is a hospital.
These are reusable.
Yeah, she got really bad.
Podcast.
So I just wanted to give you a heads up. I don't want you to mail from Wesley. I know she lived there.
Well, I don't go that far. Please.
Fire. Yes.
It was our HR administrators.
I didn't make one for you.
Good.
Thank you.
I want to tell you, Carl.
She should have made one for you, a big one.
Target.
Yes. Target practice.
Administrator, all right, sorry. She's the legal administrator, but yes, she does.
I can understand.
I tried.
Actually.
Thank you.
And
It's very nice.
Jackie.
what is it?
Jackie.
I have to go through all these. 20 of them.
So when we're done, we'll just pack them up and give them to Laura, and she can keep them here, so we don't lose them. Appreciate it.
Okay.
I like that idea.
Just write it on the table, and then we'll sit in the same spot every time.
Is that okay?
Your name is
Jason.
Jason Robinson. I think I have one. Oh, there you are.
I hate to send you back up your car to write one up.
No.
Rick Cox.
I read a lot, so, but I still, some of it I'm just like,
Because
I did?
yeah, I was talking to my dad about it, because I just don't want to do what they did with the back.
I like that idea though.
Just look for signs.
I'll answer any like for student loan.
Right.
It's in that pile, so.
Thanks, Brian.
All right, well, got you next, sir. So,
Can't do it. Can't drive anywhere near.
I don't go down Ross.
I'll find her.
Yes, I saw it
Maybe.
when I went
Okay.
through.
It's a rare occasion when I go down
It
Ross.
went pretty crazy, pretty quick. For sure.
Oh, there it is.
We were in Jefferson Township.
Because you said Rick on the,
That's why I go by, I'm
said
sorry.
Frederick. Okay.
Took me 10 years, I could never get the township to put my name in.
Your name?
Just like, remember?
Remember who you are?
I am not young.
You're Fred too?
Hey, I
Yeah, Fred's
taught kindergarten. You know, this was a must. So 8th and 7th and 8th grade, must. I had to know who people like.
She's like,
What'd you say? No. Who, what, I forgot your name. Jeff. Right there. I don't know. Maybe. I don't know.
Oh, windows right there.
Okay.
This is,
All right. Oh, there you are, Ryan. I think we're getting down to the,
Right, her?
Bill.
That's the, yeah. That big.
So how Steve and Trent and Candy and Roger and Craig and Alicia.
Like, she has to go.
I knew a couple were coming, so we all set up for.
I have it, it's terrible, but I just don't have it. See, it right now.
The other way around. No, it's just more, the argument is by the township bank.
And it really just, follow me later, it's just still in the like.
Oh, that's Candy.
You know, I think it's going back to town, you know.
Well, we gotta find a chair for him this side.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
You guys trying to boost?
Oh, we do have all the girls over on the side.
They're staring at him.
I know.
I'll let you have
Right down
it.
here.
Poor woman.
We pulled
Yeah.
our teams
One
over
of
there.
them. Yeah.
I just had it. You got your name?
I will. Will you, Miss?
I don't think the wife, she'll be all right.
You're the technical head of the table.
Yeah, let her sit over at one of the
Podium.
big desks.
So she won't think that. No. That's what she said. That Alicia's in the hospital.
Yeah.
She's our.
Yes. Yeah, we're trying to, this screen broke and we were trying to figure out how to spread people out, and so we ended up over here.
It works better.
Well, these guys need to come in the center so they can see the.
Well, yeah, we'll have to do some.
We might turn the table. Tables the other way.
They should have the spinny chairs. Make their lives
It
easier.
is. So,
It is a better configuration,
What is? Yeah,
this.
yeah, but now they can't see the picture.
All right, just so you guys know, I am recording it, so we
Like you
can
said.
trim
But
stuff.
oh, we got another one.
Oh, now we can do the
All right, cool table.
shoot table. We're gonna pull up the table here for you, sir.
You went down there, you guys, you gonna sit with the girls?
He'll sit with us.
I'll just slide it that way.
You get rid of it.
That's always, that's always.
This right in here.
Great, thank you, right in here.
And what's your name?
Roger Humble.
Steve Perkins.
Don't worry, we can share.
I like it.
I think it's great.
People are. So, yes.
That one does not have the actual presentation in it, Laura,
Where do you live?
so you don't have this, but I could probably get it to you. But it has all the other supplemental
If
information.
people want to add that, that's sort of.
I just asked.
Yeah, oh, well, if somebody said that.
All right. Ready? So we'll go ahead and get started. Welcome and introductions. We can still go around the room, even though Judy provided us wonderful name tags. Just as we get familiar with everybody, maybe we won't do it as often, but just so you can say your name and who or what you represent in this committee.
Jeff Johnson, Township Trustee.
Excuse me, could we also maybe, say why you're on this committee? I mean, why did you want to be here? What is the motivation? Just curious.
Okay.
I guess I'm the trustee. No, you're on this committee, so.
I'm Lori May, I'm the administrator of West Virginia Fire District.
I'm Shelley Murray Eposh. I wanted to be on the committee because I love living in Etna Township and I plan to stay here indefinitely. So I'd love to be, in the know and what's going on. I'd like to if at all possible, help offer ideas to make it a great place for when my kids are ready to go out on their own, my grandkids. I represent senior communities, seniors, their parents and old parents and grandparents.
Okay, Shelley, that was way too good. People are just gonna go, yeah, what she said.
That's what I'm thinking, what she said.
All right, you're welcome.
Saved everybody. I'm Ashley King. I decided to request to be on the committee because I have 2 little boys here, and I would really, really like to be here for the rest of my life. So when we moved here, we liked the area, and we would like to see it grow appropriately, not inappropriately. So that's why I decided to join.
I like what you said too.
What would she say?
There's only so many transitions you can do with her.
Yeah, I'm Jackie Katz, and I've pretty much been in the area for many years, but I'm new to Etna Township within the last 2 to 5 years with the horse farm in Etna, and I hope that it stays halfway rural, but I also want to see not all the buildings going all over the place, but in certain areas.
Yeah, what she said. Judy Kraftmeyer. I've lived in Etna Township for over 47 years. So I was invited to be on the first land use committee. And I've got this wonderful tabbed brochure that I will refer to on different occasions because there's a lot of things in here that were never addressed. And those were concerns of citizens. And I think some of the things I know that we want to move forward with new, but we also want to take a look at what wasn't done and what was done well. Amen.
Wow. It's Jason Robinson. I'm the president of the HOA over at the Longwood Crossing subdivision. I'm a resident, one of the best interests, and I was free on Wednesday night, so.
So you're ordering pizza?
Yeah.
Steve Perkins, 7352 Palmer Road. I'm just here for prestige. No,
Resume.
Yes, it's a resume enhancement. But no, I'm relatively new to Etna Township, but I've been involved every community I've been in prior to, so it seems appropriate to be a part of this one as well. So looking forward to help steer in the future because I plan to be here a long time.
My name is Roger Hubble. My wife and I live in the villas at Cumberland. I grew up in this, the Tassel area, 50s and 60s. We recently moved back here, built our forever home, so I have a vested interest in trying to make Etna as nice as it can be for the rest of our lives.
I'm Rick Cox, Cumberland Trail. I was on the Etna BZA for 18 years, and I also have a foot in developing. I do work civil engineering, site design, so I haven't done any work in Etna, but I do this type of work all over the state of Ohio. So I thought that would be a helpful insight into the.
I'm Candy Engel. I'm on the Southwest Licking School District Board of Education, and I'm also a lifelong resident of the township, and my daughters are actually 4th generation residents of the township, and I'm hoping that they will stay residents of the township. So my goal is that we continue to plan for growth in a manner that is good for everybody.
I'm Fred Harvey, one of the farmers in the community, I guess. But, we've got probably 700 acres in Etna Township that is ground that will be your potential developable ground at some point. And so I'm here to represent landowners so that we don't get shut out. They've called it progress for 50 years every time we've lost a farm to development. Now all of a sudden it's not progress, and it's kind of hard to shut it down now.
Until we run out of food. I'm Jeff Hall and live and work here. Just want to be involved in hopefully responsible progress?
My name is Ryan Davis. I've been in Etna Township for a relatively short while compared to some, but I kind of got involved right before the rezoning referendum started before the last election, and just been heavily involved in everything going on. I've got 4 daughters, so the combination of the area changing, the school impact, I've got lots of kind of varying interests. I've just been involved in everything I can be around here. So.
Gary Burkholder, I live in Cumberland Trail. We've lived there for 20 years. Former township trustee, and I want to be involved because I have concerns about the direction that the township is going in. And I'm very excited about this whole committee, the different perspectives, so that we can have, as you said, planned responsible growth here and getting and protecting our neighborhoods so that we don't have warehouses next to residential development.
Brian Hurd, born and raised here in Etna Township. I've been in the real estate field for many years, and I'm old enough to remember what Hamilton Road used to look like and what Bryce Road used to look like, what 256 looks like now. So I want to be involved to learn from some of their mistakes and make this jewel.
Bill Black, I've been a resident of Etna Township for 47 years, was involved in the previous development process, due to information Judy probably heard, and interested in how the township is going to develop and see if we can do a better job this time around than we did last time.
My name is Jim Hunter. I'm who the township hired to help lead the process and guide the information and the whole project going forward and give my opinions on everything. But ultimately, it's your plan to recommend to the township trustees, well, to the zoning commission and to the township trustees. So during all of these meetings, we'll have conversations. There will be dissent, which is great. That's how we get things hashed out. But ultimately, the majority is going to rule, and we'll go forward. Each week or each month, there'll be a different topic. You know, the first 2 are going to be kind of the sexier things of land use and transportation. Those tend to get the most input and the most emotions stirred. But we have to look at it holistically as a township as a whole. Obviously, there's I said before, various degrees and differences in this room representing different interests. And I guess my role is to, at the end of this, make sure either everyone's just a little bit pissed off or everyone's happy with how this thing is. So we don't want, half of y'all just up in arms and half of you saying hallelujah. We want to make sure this is a cohesive project. So there'll be things that we'll discuss. If there's questions outside of this, feel free to email me. We'll set up a call and we can talk about it if you want more information. Because the last thing I want to do is leave here and you go, wait, what the heck was Jim talking about? That doesn't make any sense. Ultimately, the 15 of you are going to help sell this into the community to say, hey, we put our blood, sweat, and tears in this thing. We think it's a good thing. So that's kind of my role. And I was involved in the last one at the very beginning of the creation of the comp plan. I think Gary and Paul George and whatnot when I was the Licking County Planning Commission. And my life has kind of come full circle in that township, and here I am again. So that's kind of my role in all this stuff. So happy to answer any questions. Yes, sir.
Is your contact information in here as far as email and phone number?
If not, I have cards.
Okay.
So I just grab them before I leave. I don't know if it's in there or not. It'll be on my email that I send out to everybody too, but I need your card. You can call me. So, any questions on that? So, make sure. Okay, so, you okay, Ashley?
Yeah, I'm fine. It's okay.
Okay. People choked up when we started talking about it. So I wanted to start off thinking a little bit different and try and get ideas going and questions asked about this idea of maybe not look solely at future land use as in this is going to be residential, this is going to be industrial, this is going to be commercial, retail, and look at it from a built environment standpoint where you're looking at, okay, no matter what is built, let's look at how it's designed and how it connects to everything else. And so that's the main gist of the Transect thing, and Bill and I were talking beforehand, and it's not really caught on the idea of Transect planning in Ohio. Ohio is not a huge planning forward state. You know, Oregon is typically the one that, you know, is looked upon as the state that is more progressive in planning. So I just got to thinking after I started working on all these communities, you know, there's just going to be a hodgepodge of St. Albans and Harrison and Etna and the Vascular doing everything. So there's going to be some sort of cohesion between them, but there's going to be a lot of disconnect between the plans just because county planning is not taking a lead role in this whole thing. However, the Evans Foundation, the Sarah Wallaces of the world have stepped up and hired a firm to kind of oversee a lot of the efforts that myself are doing, as well as Hallie Madai is working in Jersey Township. And they're looking at a higher level, so once we're done with our stuff, it's going to flow up to what Sarah's doing with her work. And Sarah's the chair of the T.J. Evans Foundation, fairly influential and respected in Lincoln County. And so she's convened all of the governments. I don't know, Jeff, if you've been to the meetings or if someone else maybe not. But there's a bigger effort that is going to coexist with this effort. And so Sarah's leading out with the Evans Foundation. It's about a $600,000 project, and she's raised 65% from private investors, you know, LMHs of the world, and Tessix, because they believe in the strategic plan. So, long story short, I think if the communities look at how things are built more than how they're used, all the buildings are going to change uses except maybe the houses. You know, across the street might be a repair shop, it might be a dentist. You know, those things will change, but one thing is not going to change. Well, I guess a little bit is going to widen. Pike Street is going to be Pike Street for now until whatever. So if we can lay out the community in a way that will be easily repurposed for whatever that is, whether that's a retail, whether it's apartments above and, you know, and retail below, or single family that may not just look like a typical single family unit where it's potentially mixed use and a mixed neighborhood. You know, those have lasting generational effects than just, you know, one house that is completely segregated from anything else. So using this Transect model, which and I can get you guys more information if you really want to read about it, but, you know, it looks at this, it follows the natural transect. So you start at the ocean and you work your way up into the forests and the natural. So in between, you got the deserts and you got some prairie, and, you know, you go up into your mountains. So the thought behind the Transect planning is the T1 zone, which they call the natural zone, you start at the most rural. You start at the Harveys, and then you end up, you know, at downtown Columbus, which is the urban core. I'm not saying Etna Township needs to be downtown Columbus. I'm just saying there's that whole mid-range. So maybe Cumberland Trails is the T3, the suburban zone. And maybe downtown, you know, Pike Street could be the general urban, where you have redevelopment opportunities that exist just here on Pike Street or in the property. So it kind of follows the same thing of the natural. You know, you progress to very low density rural agriculture, and you go all the way up to fully, you know, very dense land.
Jim, real quick.
Yes, sir.
MKSK did a whole packet for the trustees right before this building was built.
Planning firm.
They're a planning firm.
They're New Albany's planner.
Oh.
But they do.
There was a huge study they did at great expense to the township that introduced like a corridor for the downtown and things like that, that I think would be very interesting to look at. Unfortunately, when it came out, the first building built in the concept was this one. And their concept for Etna was retail on the bottom, housing on the top. And their first building was a pole building with rock around the side. So, but that document exists here. It's very interesting to.
What was it called?
Pardon?
What was?
The firm that did it was MKSK, who doesn't exist anymore. But
Yeah,
they do, but not as MKSK.
yeah, it's MKSK now, but it wasn't.
Oh,
it
Kinsman
wasn't-
and Klein,
So it's
sorry.
Kinsman, Klein, Group, and Meyer.
And I was around when that, in fact, I was part of that initiation. It was a 310 corridor. I don't know, Rick could be correct, it might have been more extensive than that. But prior to the bridge being built, we wanted to have a corridor plan. But I think it kind of goes back to you, some of the architectural and aesthetic things, such as the streetscape, much like what Brownsburg did with their streetscape plan. But we wanted to try to get some of that incorporated rather than just putting up a bridge and not thinking about the sidewalks and the trees and the park strip. So, but yeah, that document should be here, right?
Yeah.
Do you know what year that was?
That would have been about maybe 2006, 5 or 6. I was on from 4 to 7. And then when I left, that's when Lincoln County, that's when they contracted with Lincoln County, which you were there. You were probably one of the lead guys when John.
In the beginning, yeah, when I went to John.
Right.
I'll get it from Laura and I'll post it and send it
Oh,
out.
Center Costa, okay.
Yeah.
And you know, if there has ever been an inventory of the county or the township to identify areas that might be really special, areas that we don't want to see developed because of their uniqueness, because of their historic importance to the township, natural importance. I don't know what it might be, but has that ever been done to?
I don't know, but we'll do it as part of this project. Yeah, we'll be identifying sensitive areas, whether that's ecological or, you know, whatever it is, whatever component, we'll be identifying those, absolutely. And we'll actually be going out for a survey to have the community tell us what are those sensitive areas.
Mm-hmm.
And we'll mark them out. That way, if a development comes in and says, hey, I want to go here, the township can say, well, here's a sensitive area, and then you gotta address it.
Right, okay.
Yeah, we'll do that. So thanks for the call.
I'll just make sure,
Yeah.
not to, it's a good start, I guess.
Sure. Yeah, no, I don't want to reinvent anything. So this whole concept has 3 levels. You look at the regional level, which is the map, the kind of the greenish map you have, and there's different areas, and these different areas allow different intensities of development. So on the map, you see the 01, 02. You know, those are your floodplain, not much floodplain in the township, but those are probably, to Roger's point, the more sensitive areas. And there's not much currently listed. This was just my first go of this. But your 01 and your 02 are going to be preserved areas, so that's going to be anything locked up either by the township, by the park district, by the school district, anything of particular nature when it comes to preserved and open. And then 02 would be the reserved open space, or things like maybe a golf course or environmentally sensitive properties that we know about. So those would be your open spaces. And then you get a little more, you start going down or going up the scale, I should say, into the G1, G2, G3, G4. So G1 would be your prime ag areas. You know, we could see development potentially happening in this area, but it's going to be a very low density, probably without water and sewer, open ditches, no curb and gutter, you know, have that, or it'll still be connected, but it wouldn't be that, you know, Cumberland crossing or Long crossing type development. G2 is the controlled growth, so we're kind of getting like, okay, we can, you know, in the future we can probably see something happening in the next 5, 10 years here. It could happen today, but if it does, it's going to be a little bit higher intensity than the G1, but not as intense as the G3, which is the intended area. You know, it's the 310, 70 interchange. That's potential all the way up to the Prologis Business Park and everything that's happening there. Down 310, probably to the township line. I know there's things going on down there. So those are the things, okay, that, we know that's gonna develop, let's prepare for it, let's make sure we understand and we're ready for that type of development. And then the G4 is pretty much the most intense, and that is, you know, the redevelopment of Old Etna, or potentially a new town center somewhere else. Maybe that is, I know there's talk about, you know, back here on 310, maybe that's a little more dense because, my gosh, it's at the corner of a state route and US 70, so, or I-70. So that could be a G4, you know, that could go up. I don't have it there now, but, you know, potentially. So, and then you have special district, which is your one-offs. I did everything, the golf course, the school property, cemetery, you know, and some preserved open space, I think along with Crossing and over at, is that Royal Acres? So those are set aside permanently. So that's kind of the whole idea behind the Transect planning and not just looking at specific land uses. So within, and this is the second layer, within each of these sectors that I just mentioned, this is the style of development that we're going to allow. So the clustered land development is that, you know, that subdivision similar to Longwood Crossing where you have the open space surrounding it. So maybe we allow that in the G1 and G2 districts as, you know, more of that rural type development. And then your traditional neighborhood development, which is your grid streets, your walkable, all that stuff, maybe is in the G2 and the G3 districts. You know, you're telling the developer, hey, if you're going to do this, this is the style in which we want it to happen. And then transit-oriented development, maybe a little premature, maybe it's okay around 310 and 70, but that's if, you know, we had a dedicated bus route or light rail or something like that. So maybe not all that appropriate, but we can still leave it in there for future consideration. But then going back on the regional center development, that would be, you know, your more intense 3-story building and maybe a 4-story. I don't know what it is. We'll have to figure that out. But so we're going to put each of these styles of development within each category that you see here. So G1, the restricted growth, we are not going to have transit-oriented development. We're not going to have rural center development. You know, we're going to potentially have just cluster land development. If you're going to build in the G1, you're going to build it at this style. So, and then we gradually go up from there. So that's kind of the big, that's the second layer. So then the third layer is more of a zoning type designation. So this is the first two things I think we're going to handle here. The zoning is going to have to change eventually to accommodate the three things I just mentioned. The clustered land development is up here, traditional neighborhood, and regional. So you can kind of see the triangles. This plan, or this template recommends regional having T4, T5, and T6 if you kind of look at the peak of the triangle. The traditional neighborhood development could have T4 or T5, T4, T3, and cluster would have natural, T2, T3, and T4. I'll tell you one thing St. Albans is doing, they're not even, with cluster land development, they're not even doing T3, T4, they're just doing T2. So there's options we can prescribe in the comp plan that says where, you know, whatever we want the development to be in terms of density is going to be this T1 through T6. I can almost guarantee you guys aren't going to do T6. That's kind of the higher.
What would you consider Pike Street for here? Would that be more T4?
Probably, yeah. Okay. I would do T4 here and then T5 at the interchange potentially.
Okay.
But I could see T4 being at the interchange as well.
Okay. So like in Cumberland Trails, that would be like a T3?
Yeah.
Okay. I just want to...
No, great question. Put it all into context. Absolutely. This is, like I said, it's not a widely used concept, but I think it's valuable right now.
Yeah.
So yeah, ask questions all you want.
Has New Albany, have they kind of taken this approach to, I mean, is this, is form-based zoning related to this?
Yeah.
Where?
So the next phase of this concept is form-based zoning. So form-based zoning is typically a zoning text is just text, and everyone falls asleep reading it, it gets confusing, there's different interpretations of the same words. Form-based zoning goes, you have pictures, you have diagrams, you have, it's pretty cut and dry that someone can't misrepresent or misinterpret something. So, great segue, Gary. Yes, this is the precursor to implementing a form-based code.
So it's kind of like a tiered process coming down, as far as this, the top tier of work done,
Yes.
form-based.
Yeah, I think this committee is well suited for the first two designations, this one, and then the 4 different types of development. And then we'll recommend, I think, in this project where the T zones should land, and then the township will then take that and turn it into the zone code, because that's going to be the meat and potatoes of keeping developers' feet to the fire is this T type designations. So, I mean, that's it in a nutshell. These are the different types. I'm not going to go over them. I kind of already did. This was the clustered land development. These are just renderings. Again, don't take this verbatim, like this is what it's going to be, but just trying to exercise your minds and thoughts and creativity of what, Ashley, to your point, maybe that's Pike Street in the future. I don't, maybe it is, maybe it isn't. And then, again, maybe not this design, but maybe this is at 310 and 70 in some form of fashion. So,
Jump from sequence, and I don't want to get too far ahead, but once we get through this process and this approved by the trustees, the trustee board should be pretty well prepared to go ahead and to get the zoning going.
I would hope that's a recommendation that comes out of this plan. That we've laid the groundwork. Now you just got to take it a little bit further and get that zoning.
And I would, we've got to get zoning commission on something like that. That form base, as you know, is so intense and detailed that the impact that I would hope that the township would contract like we have with you or whatever.
Yeah, it doesn't. Yes, it's going to have to be with someone. It doesn't have to be with me.
Right. That would be the next logical step.
Absolutely.
Because the two go together.
Absolutely. And so there's continuity in the zoning, there's continuity between the zoning and the comp plan, and it's not disjointed and it's not disconnected like often they are. Zoning codes are updated, I don't know how many times you do an update a year, 3, 4, or 5 times. That quickly becomes disjointed from the comp plan. Yes, sir.
In regard to your comment about being consistent and somewhat uniform, do we not also need to take into account the neighbors, meaning the Tassville to the north, Licking County, that against what Iowa Township to the south, in terms of what they're doing, so that we're not butting heads and creating a situation.
Yeah, it might not be the next meeting, but maybe the one after that. I'll have all the other land uses laid out for you in terms of Fairfield County, Nevada Township, Brownsburg, Tassville, and Kirkland. Yeah, absolutely. We want those to be joined. As best we can. I mean, there's.
The other question, would it make sense, because I've read through all these and some of the terms that you use, and you mentioned this already, there might be some differences of interpretation of what that word or words, phrases mean.
About 15 pages of definitions that will accompany this. Yes. And also, too, Bill pointed out, there's some references to tables. We're not there yet. I just wanted to float this idea to you before I hit through tables and charts and everything else, because I waste a lot of time on everyone's part. If you look at this and be like, Jim, you're crazy, I don't know what you're doing. But if you, I'm sorry?
Small
Right, yeah. So this is an iterative process. Again, I don't want to make you think I'm too crazy. But here's kind of the definitions of each one. Again, these can be tweaked wherever we see fit. I believe they're in the packet as well. But this is the starting point, and then we can go further from that. So this is kind of the role I think you would play I've already said it, but I'll go, determine the region, so that's the map you see here. And then we'll have to determine which community unit falls within there. And then the T, transects, would again be filled out during the zoning process. So we'll accomplish the first two if you think this is a good way to do it. We'll also do a land use plan. We'll also look at, residential, commercial, all that stuff. But this kind of overlays it and looks at it in a different light in terms of the development style. So that's kind of how the committee lays into this process. So right now, again, I just like to quantify things. We're saying, reserved and preserved growth, we're about 2.5% of the township right now is in those categories, based on the map, which will change. We're restricting about 29% of the growth area of the township is going to be restricted. Again, doesn't prohibit, so we're not stripping landowners from some sort of development, but we're going to say, can we do it a little bit different down here? And then controlled and intended, obviously take up the bulk. That again, that is Prologis, that's Pike Street, that's 310 and 70. Sorry, excuse me, Infogrowth is Pike Street. And then the special district being the school property and some other areas. So that's how it lays out right now. I think if we did this 10 years ago, it'd be heavily skewed to the restricted growth. But maybe we don't have the growth we have today, or maybe it's styled a little bit different. So again, that's just something that I wanted to show, what the balance, I don't know if there's a balance, I wanted to show the quantified numbers of the map that you see in front of you here today. That's you guys. So, am I crazy? Well, let me say this. Hopefully my family's not watching. What do you think? I mean, is this a viable thing? I don't expect you to understand it 100%. But I think we have an opportunity to mold the township, not only this township, many of the townships, in terms of how it's developed, the layout of it, the longevity of it, the generational aspects of getting it right the first time. I'm not saying it's wrong right now. This is just a different way of looking at it.
Personally, after you explained it,
Would you please hot water?
sorry, after you explained it, I would say that I understand enough to feel comfortable going this route. I don't know how other people feel, but it's understandable what you're saying we would look at here, for me.
I like that it's a structured tier set up there where you're starting at the top, instead of trying to work from the bottom up, it starts from the general and gets more specific as it comes down. But I would like to hear more even on the form-based and even on down, just to, just to have the complete picture of it. But on the overview, I'm amenable to this style setup.
Given my limited experience, I like it because I think we're going to have a better quality product when it comes to building and the aesthetically pleasing, and then the transition from one sector to the next. And rather than, as I said the last week, have this hodgepodge approach, anything goes, because we really don't regulate design right now.
And it's hard from a township standpoint. You gotta get to LCPC. But I think this gives the township a little bit more leg to stand on.
We say no factories just up front, no warehouses.
Sure. You can say whatever you all. Absolutely.
Well, with that segue, and I'm going to, I guess, interject this right now, because thanks for the Pataskala comp plan. But my concern, which I wanted to state at this meeting, is that when you look at the amount of ground that they have for flex industrial or flex commercial, whatever, and then the industrial manufacturing, and of course, all you have to do is go up the parkway, all that is coming through right now. And so I agree with, actually, I think we've overdeveloped, and we've put warehouses in places they shouldn't be, industrial park. Then we got divided with Amazon, but it was all condensed there. There was some adjacent residential. But now putting them on Main Street and then down at the, I mean, it makes me sick every time we get off the interstate, look at that big ugly warehouse, I mean, that big concrete building that who knows how long it'll be there. But I just think there might have been better use at the interstate. So my concern is that there's probably over 500, maybe 1,000 acres of Tabasco. And that's all gonna come down the parkway.
Sure.
And we've got truck problems now.
Yep.
So.
And ironically, in an area where there's actually abundant transportation by the time you take in 40, 70, and north-south maybe we're not quite as good, but east and west, we got it in spades.
Yeah.
So it's like, that's part of where I share that concern is putting them in the wrong place, especially from a transportation standpoint, it's almost like we shot ourselves in the foot, that, it's not so much that a particular building went in, it was where it went, from a transportation standpoint.
No, that makes complete sense.
I got a question too. So this plan, what is the overall length of time that we're trying to put together?
So typically, 10-year horizon, I would hope in the plan, we ask the township to look at it after 5. With Intel, maybe that's a yearly brush up with the zoning commission and the trustees as well. Just saying, hey, this is making sense. But the horizon usually is about 10 years with a halfway point, check it hard look at it.
How does this plan change as more and more people come? There's been talk of Etna becoming a city. How does that change this plan?
Well, as in Etna City, the city of Etna, if you incorporate, I would hope the city of Etna would then adopt the same plan. St. Albans and Alexandria are having that conversation, you've seen in the papers. So if they were to merge and become the city of St. Albans Township, or whatever, the artist formerly known as Alexandria, they would adopt that plan, and then that would be the guiding document for the community.
Right.
Now, to the detriment of the township, if something is in Kirkersville or Pataskla or the township, Brownsburg, this has no merit whatsoever. Yes, sir.
I have a couple of questions. One, in regard, and you sort of touched on it, but that's what raised the question. If we come up with this plan, and it's just a recommendation, as I understand it, to the zoning committee by way of the trustees, there's no obligation on their part. They can say, screw you, we're going to do it the way we want to do it.
Absolutely.
Is there any recourse to tighten that just down a little bit? Do you know?
I believe that's governed by the Ohio Revised Code. You know that. Again, because
I think it's important to keep that in mind. So the second question is, part of the reason for doing this, I think, and I'd really like to hear some comments from Fred down there, because he's probably the biggest landowner, at least in this group. But part of it is that whatever development is going to happen, that landowner, i.e. Fred or whoever, we want to put him in a position where he's got the best possible situation that he can have, and the developer, whoever it is comfortable with what we have described, and they're not going through the zoning committee and saying, hey, we want to do it this way, and we want that to go like, hey. So how do we deal with that?
so ultimately, there's a balance of all three. So the balance of the property owner's rights, the balance of the developer per se. Some would say that is ultimately the property owner, and then the balance of the 5,000 people that live here. So I think if someone comes to the Township Zoning Commission and wants to do something in the G1 at an urban core level, it's within the township's duty, I think, at that point to say, no way, that's not even close. Now, if they come in and say, we want to do something just a tick higher than what is allowed by this plan, maybe there's a conversation. The township could be hard-nosed and say, hell no, it's not, nope, you gotta stick to the plan. I'm a realist and understand that sometimes it doesn't happen and it's easier said than done. So there's always a piece of negotiation. I think it's,
Well, I think that's sort of what happened from 2008 to now, some of those things can happen, so we got warehouse and housing and stuff like that.
yeah, I don't disagree there, sure. But I think doing it this way locks in the style of development, which is going to preclude or even exclude warehousing or there's nothing in this that talks about 500,000 square foot warehouses. Whether that's a good thing or a bad thing, that's up for us to decide. But nowhere in here is that. It's front office and, maybe some townhomes in the back, and then further back is some potential single-family dwellings or something. So it has the potential to diversify the commercial base instead of, my huge worry with that and the buildings, you're in the money right now, but what happens in the next COVID era when e-fulfillment goes away or is significantly reduced? You got a lot of rooftop
buildings
that you have to repurpose. And again, I think this would better lay out a network that is more easily repurposed. You can repurpose a 20,000 square foot building much easier than a 500,000 square foot. Or whatever they are. So again, they serve their purpose, don't get me wrong. I'm not here to question prior. I'm just trying to push the envelope a little bit on what we can do in the future.
Jim, do you know if anybody's doing regional transportation planning in conjunction with Intel? You hear all kinds of stories about, they're fixed for an east-west route, but they're looking for a north-south route, and I've heard talk about Main Street becoming a major north-south connector to that whole New Albany complex, even building a new interchange.
I've heard the same. It's been rumor and speculation on Main Street. I think the huge hurdle there is you're going to have to buy a lot of houses. And so I don't know if maybe meanders a little bit through farm fields or whatnot. I don't know. But yes, I've heard that same concept.
They seem to have a lot of money.
Sure, money does a lot of things. There is one thing that would save that from happening is a huge push to use Thornwood Drive as the north-south connector. So you could come down, make 161 to Cherry Valley and down Thornwood. That has much more traction and much more political will behind it than the Main Street does. The Main Street, I would say, is a little less than a pipe dream right now. Thornwood is real. So.
Don't they need to also keep in mind of what Fairfield County's talking about, the 33 connection?
Connector. Yep.
And
the Licking County TID is heavy into that, the Transportation Improvement District. And I'm going to actually have Bill Lozier here. I'm pretty sure he's probably regular at your meetings with that connection of 33.
am I right in saying that when Amazon put all their lanes in, I've been told that that was all set up for an overpass at some point, and to begin with, just an overpass to a east-west road. But now now I hear them talking interchange if it would happen there, which makes sense.
Right.
Interchange where?
I guess
At Amazon.
to sum up what Fred's saying, are there any things that we haven't mentioned that should be said out loud, like you're aware of, ideas, if you said pipe dream and things like that we know on a bigger level that might impact this and what we decide?
No, I think that probably the biggest ones are the transportation. I was part of the Transportation Improvement District, so I saw the kind of the list of the projects. I think this was down 9 or 10, the Main Street or some north-south connector between 161 and 70.
Well, just any input we can get to, like, they've got ideas for 20 years out. I mean, I just didn't know if there was anything that you saw or heard at your level with your communication that kind of like, hey, we know this is probably going to happen that we haven't even mentioned yet or something like that.
No, to answer your question, no. But I am going to ask Bill to come in and prep you and brief you you all on the transportation. The 33 corridor, same thing. I know a little bit about it, he lives and breathes it every day, so he'll be a guest.
And a little side note, that the county, I was at a recent meeting, the county commissioners now have joined the Mid-Ohio Regional Planning Commission. Before, they were not part of that because we had, plus our own planning here. So they've done that to get that connection, back to your point, to plug into what the Mid-Ohio Regional, because obviously with Intel and even before that, Morpsey is planning for the entire region, and they do look, heavily into transportation. So I think that'll be a good resource for all of us now to see how these plans come together and how they're coordinated. But yeah, Bill Loser, the TID, he's the director. So he's got a lot of information, and they have either monthly or every other month.
Monthly, I think, unless they cancel it. Yep. So.
I don't know how serious this makes it sound, but we've already received letters from attorneys that want to represent us for that 33 coming in.
They were probably the TID meeting.
So they must think there's some validity to it.
Ambulance chasers almost.
True.
But they
Educated.
there was,
Educated ambulance chaser.
I don't truly know. I honestly don't. I'd have to look.
Knocking off of Allen Road in 33.
Yeah.
Start.
Is that Allen or it's Sailor?
I think it's Allen.
I think it was originally,
Allen Road.
Yeah, I cut it that way.
it was originally Salem, and I think they
Right.
shifted.
They're not gonna come up Allen Road.
Yeah, 'cause it
Those
was
are the
gonna-
big houses.
I've seen different maps.
Yeah, my brother and sister-in-law lived right there.
Back in the 90s, we looked at Allen Road, when I was at Fairfield County, we were pushing on Allen Road. But there was resistance on that, but we wanted it far enough out. And what is it now, Pickering, is what they wanted, is Pickering and have an interchange there, Pickering?
Yes.
Yeah, I got traffic light.
But Allen was
They're
the
wanting to do
one
away with
that
that, I
put
just
up
read
the
that.
Alt Road and then hopefully connect up here. But I haven't gotten that from Morpsey yet, but they did that, the townships fixed.
With MS Consultants, I think, did it. Yeah.
Well, I mean, no, with the one that Morpsey did a small study about the possibility of an interchange. Now, that may have all changed now with Intel coming, but I haven't had a chance to get that report yet.
How about the road from Cole, east and west, south of 70 that coming over to Amazon that is talked about? Is
Well,
that
once we get into the land use and kind of this, the next step is transportation. So part of that is going to be mapping out roads that we feel are going to be necessary for the betterment of the township, whether that's new ones, whether that's intersections that need improved. We won't define the improvement, but we'll say, hey, this is a dangerous intersection or it's crappy road. And so that'll be either next meeting or 2 meetings from now. We'll actually use these maps to draw, and then I'll digitize everything. And that way, the plan shows when the developer comes in, it shows the developer like, hey, we've identified this road as being deficient for some reason. You need to chip in and help us fix it. Or take the comp plan to a federal, take it to Morpsey and say, hey, here's our deficient roads, help us get some money. So that's the huge exercise that'll be very important, either a month from now or 2 months from now. And then that will overlay on top of what we're going to do with the land use. Because I feel it's important to look at the land use first, because it doesn't matter about transportation. If the land use isn't, transportation I think has to come second in the discussion. It's probably most important, but we got to lay out where the land is going to be developed first, and then we'll fill in the transportation after that, whether that's new transportation or improved transportation.
Just on a quick side note there, somebody, I've traveled a lot throughout the United States, seen that drive fair and stuff like that. What we have there just south of 70, in front of the Screen Machine Company, stuff like that, and 84 is a place there, is basically a frontage road.
Yep.
You see a lot of those in Texas and other places like that, and they're kind of like roundabouts. They're a little bit difficult to get used to, but once they're there, it's a really, really nice feature.
Sure.
And something like that, I think, helps defined.
You can nominate the first intersection, put one,
Yeah.
make the Palmer.
Yeah, the problem, I mean, there's natural ones now in St. Albans Township with old 161. That's what they're gonna use it for.
Yeah.
But yeah, they're absolutely, it reduces curb cuts and many different, there's very big positives that come out of those, 100%. So we could identify those. So no one's throwing anything at me about this idea. It's something we want to continue down the path with.
I think it's a starting point.
What's the alternative? I guess.
Your typical residential, commercial map that you have today.
My general thought is if you've got an overarching structure, it helps keep everybody that's a player in it, in some kind of a lane, rather than, wait a second, what part of this do you think that belongs here, type thing, versus.
Right. And you have trustee, 4-year terms, is your zoning commission, I'm assuming the same, there's turnover. And there's less to interpret, I think, in the structure. I think it's more clear. You guys might think I'm crazy. If you're into it. I keep saying that.
Well, this is different than what we did first.
Absolutely.
But I see value in this type of, like I said, get it in a funnel, and where you get to the final destination, rather than just playing around with round level, playing this parcel versus that parcel,
Right.
this.
Well, you did that over there.
Right. Yeah.
And I'm a visual learner, so I need to see how this fits on everything too. And it looks like, from all the warehousing and everything, we've got a mess to clean up, at least to suggest to clean up. Because, it's, the monster's already here. And now how can we make it pretty?
You're correct.
Well,
Dress it up.
I'm here to help figure out how to maybe not let it get ugly, in your words. I'm not saying there isn't, but is there a better way to do it? Is there a better way to generate jobs and generate tax revenue than warehouses? I think once a certain.
I don't see a strong opposition to growth, it's just, this scattered, put it here, put it there, put it over there, something like that.
Yeah, if we have warehouses, they need to be right here.
Right.
And that's it. I get it.
Yeah, I think you put a fence around where they are now and say no more beyond where they are. I mean, you got an industrial park that was designed, that's where they were supposed to be. If you look out 15, 20 years, potentially, I mean, all the way out to Kirkersville could be one nice community after another, linking with communities in Tasco, linking with communities in Fairfield County. So you got a whole area, urban area. And we want to make sure that, number one, we're taking the lead, I think, and doing it the right way. And number two, that we're not creating roadblocks for other people, whether it be Tasco or Fairfield County.
Let's say it never actually comes to that where we get, the huge flood of people because of Intel. We still got the plan, it doesn't hurt anything to have it laid out there. If a lot of that 30% of G1 or whatever is never turns into anything other than what it is today, who's the lesser for it? Nobody.
I think, from my perspective, one thing we want to avoid is if you drive around the city of Columbus like I had the opportunity to do, there is a hotel, or not a hotel, apartment complex after apartment complex after apartment complex after apartment complex, all over. There's got to be 15, 20,000 apartments going up, or have gone up.
There's not enough
500
housing
units,
for the people.
1,000
that live here.
units, 2,000 units. I mean, it's massive.
There's not enough housing. in
That's what they say.
Trust me, I've been trying to.
Where's all the people coming from? That's my question. But that's another.
But I think there's.
My point is, we don't want that here in this township.
There's 60 people moving into the Columbus region a day. Well,
60.
okay.
That's all I
Wow, that seems low.
Or that's 15 of them. 10,000 parking.
I just want you to think about that. with all of those people moving in, lots of them have kids. And so when they have children, when we're not allowing those big warehouses and all of that, that's tax revenue that you're not allowing into, because even those places, even when those are abated, we're in pilot payments with the schools.
Pilot is payment in lieu of taxes, so.
There are things, so, and I'm with you all, I live here too, and so I hate the traffic, I don't like the semis. Yes, they're not attractive. I work right down off Home Road, so I work right across, you know, I have to go through 7 traffic lights now instead of none, you know, instead of 1. So I get it 100%, but I just want to remember that when in a year from now, when we need another elementary school, I see all your names, so I'm going to be knocking for the yes vote for another levy. So just,
I know
we have to remember that part of it too.
I know that Pickerington didn't develop enough commercial warehouses in Pickerington, and they're always going after taxes.
Yeah, I mean, that's a problem. I mean, that there's a balance of.
Well, and I think financial scale.
Not too many, that's right, there's not any kids in this warehouse.
Too much
Indiana,
work time if they do.
it's insane.
Yeah.
When I was younger, I've been there my whole life. I grew up there, my grandma still lives there, but I love their little downtown area. I think it's great. I love how they utilize it. I think their parks and rec are great there. But holy moly, when you drive down their roads now, you can't go anywhere. Their schools are way overcrowded. Even when I was in school, it was overcrowded. My brother graduated 4 years ago. He could barely walk up their stairs. Like, it was embarrassing. And they have high schoolers crossing the road now to go to high school. A busy road. It doesn't seem safe. And that's not something we want to see for the schools here. We want,
So the
that's why we want to make
warehouses
sure
that
we're doing.
everybody's saying, let's not build, let's not build,
Right.
do help the schools.
They do, yes,
They
they
throw
do.
off
They-
a ton of revenue.
They get
Absolutely.
tons of
See,
revenue.
I'm not opposed to a warehouse, I'm only opposed to where it is.
Right.
Right, so that,
Where
right,
else
so
would
just
you
remember,
put it on
that's like,
310 where 70 is?
So,
It's like
Still
right
a lot of
there.
land
Just put it with the rest
over
of
here
them.
on
As long as you
north side
figure
of
the
the
zone
street.
for it.
And then
I'm
the
there.
park.
yeah,
I'm good with it.
that's all I'm
Well,
saying, is just.
now you've got them on 310, why not keep going all the way from 310 Etna, and do it warehouses? And now we're on Main Street, now we're on Etna Parkway. Yes, I have a warehouse on Etna Parkway, I do own a Parkway.
I guess what I'd like to see,
So-
though, if we're gonna do those kinds of things, if we had more office buildings here, those would generate,
Correct.
those would generate.
I'm not
too,
saying
but not-
just warehouses, just put some more commercial.
So let me show you this.
Right,
This is a analysis I did for Granville Schools, Granville Township. This is how much the development paid in real estate taxes just to the school district. And then I looked at how many students were there, so this is how much one student generated in real estate taxes. This is the size, this is the units, that's the students per acre, students per unit. The original plat, so downtown Granville, which is all mixed use, generates $17,000 per child that lives in that district. It only costs, I think, I don't have it, I think it costs $12,000 in Granville to educate a child. So the school district is making $5,000 on each child in that mixed use district. So everything else, I mean, everyone knows park trails. I mean, that's a losing game no matter what. So to the point of the school district, this is what we need to aim for. You know, that diversity of office, retail, because there is real estate taxes generated, there is income tax generated. It might not be as big as I mean, the jets are huge, I get that. But there's other things to help the school district to offset those schools. So, I just want to point that out because I think there's 88 students in downtown Granville. And they're making money off of those students, in this context. So I just want to show you that. So I think there's value to the school district if we diversify how we develop. I don't know if you would agree with me.
No, absolutely. No, I totally agree. I just want to just remind everyone to make sure we're diversified. Yeah, be conscious of, we can't put every piece of land, a house on 5 acres, you know, which.
And I'm glad you brought it up because I think, I'm always concerned about the impact on the schools.
Yeah.
Because I know you've got challenges, you build it, now all of a sudden
And
it's filled up.
Exactly.
When you talk about providing additional housing, what's the impact going to be on the school?
Absolutely, yes.
So I think that's a key. And I think there needs to be always good coordination between the local government and the school district.
Absolutely, absolutely.
So that you, when you're making those decisions at the township board, what's it going to do to our schools?
Right, absolutely.
Maybe do you have like, I don't know, some sort of packet or something that everybody here could look at to see how the schools are doing based on how many children are in the area currently?
Yeah, absolutely. I can bring that for the next meeting. We have a growth study, and we started it last year, and then we get an update every year. So I can bring a copy, or I can even email it.
Something about it, but yeah, I think that would
I
be great.
can get it.
I just think that would be
Email it out, and it
for
shows
everybody
you.
to have.
It actually shows the basically what we're going to see from 10 years out.
So do we know what, like Harrison Township, they just put 280 acres into something on 158 and 70 something.
Old Kirkersville.
Right.
So it is going to warehouses and commercial and
That
everything
they
else.
said would never happen.
Correct. It's already been approved. So we're going to have warehouses on 158 and 310.
So when this comes to fruition, we come up with this master plan, I think we need a commitment from the township trustees in zoning that they will do their best to adhere to it. And when it comes time for reelection, they need to be asked, are you gonna stick to this plan, or are you gonna come up with your own? Otherwise, it's for naught.
This was from Candy's counterpart, that, well, through the school, but this is what I was provided when we were doing the Harrison plan. High school is at 1406, it's got a capacity of 1,600. Capacity at the middle school of 70 kids, at an elementary 130, and this is probably all out of date already, is February, but those are some numbers that the district provided me during. And we'll go back to the district again during this whole process for those numbers again.
Hey, one thing about these districts is things ebb and flow, like things come into popularity, more people want to buy, and things go out, like Cumberland Trails came up with patio homes, very small homes, very small lots. Didn't even exist when Cumberland Trails was there. How does going to these districts, Etna is going to get built. Right now we're on a wave with, it's the perfect 70-40, it's a perfect transportation corridor. I'm not a big fan of warehouses, but if I was a warehouse guy, this is, you can't pick a better place. So I understand that, but that will peak. We probably already saw the peak because now it's going 158 east of Jacksontown. 13's the next one. It's going to get hammered. So those plans are already being done now. So assuming warehouses peak, now we do this. What is the chance that we do something that becomes something that goes out of style and people don't want? Again, when we're trying to keep the community up, and if that's too restrictive, people can't come in here and do what they want, so they just move on down the road or follow that growth.
So, yes, so if they don't do what the township wants, or allows, you know, through.
Yeah, I could see in the position where in 20 years, all these warehouses are dwindling down, still operating, but the new ones and new, more exciting jobs are going out east. You know, Zanesville now, they're out there. And now we are not the place to be. Now we have all these areas that did or didn't get developed. What happens if what we do there is something that is not interesting for people to buy and grow.
Yeah, I think the Transect, I think that is based on kind of timeless, classic planning principles where you're gonna, I mean, if it's a thriving downtown, everyone wants to be the Granvilles, the downtown of Albany. So I think if you build it in this manner, I think you're almost kind of proofing yourself against that downturn of the degradation of the buildings and the degradation of people wanting to come here. Because I think you're building it not to a fad and not to a trend, but to more of a classic style of planning. So you're not a patio home, you're not a single family, you're a mixture of everything. And diversifying that style of design, I think, kind of insulates or potentially insulates you from that hop, skip, and jump effect down the road.
And the reason I ask is my office is downtown Zanesville. When you work in downtown Zanesville, every building was what's popular now, retail on the bottom and everything on top. Well, Columbus too. It gets to be a point where those people get in, and I think Columbus is getting there. Everyone's moving into those. It's getting expensive. I have to pay to park, I have to do whatever. And these subdivisions are dwindling. All of a sudden, these young 35-year-olds who've never had a house go, I can move into these old decrepit subdivisions. I can park in my driveway, I can have a dog, I can have somebody come mow my grass, and I'm saving a bunch of money. So that's the fear, that it'll all come into this urban redevelopment, but it will peak, and then everybody goes out, and then you have, when it leaves downtown, it looks worse than when it did. Downtown Zanesville's just dead.
100%. Yeah, so I think we don't try and push one thing more than another. We don't try and saturate ourselves with the T6s or T5s, We still allow growth in the G1 district, it's just different. It's maybe the more suburban style, or not suburban, the more rural style. We still allow subdivisions to go in, like Concord or Llama Crossing. So we don't have just one style of development, we don't have that one fad. And I think if there's diversification across the spectrum, at least for housing, and even for commercial residential, I think you put yourself in a bubble to help prevent that, hopefully in the future. Is it guaranteed? Absolutely not.
That's why it goes 5 years to review.
Right.
So
yeah, there could be this whole, accessory dwelling units, like, those 5 years ago, what the heck is an accessory dwelling unit? And it's a cottage in your backyard for your old grandma or grandpa or a recent graduate. There's a big hubbub of allowing them or not allowing them, and that's a fad. I don't say fad, it's a trend. It's a viable use of property, but some communities are absolutely dead set against it. So, yeah, there's going to be ebbs and flows, absolutely.
I'd definitely like to see more small business opportunities. If you don't have $500,000 right now, you're not buying anything out of it. And, you're not going to get small business out of it. You're just not going to happen. There's just no buildings available, number one. And so when somebody comes in and wants to develop, there should be the opportunity to rent for these small businesses, or even, purchase something at a reasonable cost that a business can sustain themselves.
Sure.
Well,
I think density gets you there. If a developer is able to cash flow better, he can pay a little bit higher, he or she can pay a little bit higher for that property, and cut that up into different forms for keeping costs low. Maybe they're going to be opportunistic and keep prices high. I don't know, but
I would be a little bit less concerned about prices paid too high. What I read about Intel is correct. They're saying the average salary there is going to be $135,000. That is going to drive wages up on everybody, every business all around Central Ohio, probably within 100 miles of Central Ohio. So, at least in my lifetime, and probably most of our lifetimes, I don't think it's going to be a problem. Maybe somewhere down the road it is, it's something not to ignore, but Intel, Intel project, particularly if they reach out long-term and they wind up investing $100 billion, that they're dangling out there as a carrot. If that actually happened, it would exceed anybody here in terms of your lifetime. So I don't think we have to be concerned too much about that. We want a nice community, places, something that people say, I want to move to Etna Township because it's a great place to raise my kids. That would seem to me to be a good moniker or goal or whatever. And build in the infrastructure, build in the commercial, build in the things that makes living at the township attractive, as well as, proper communities and so forth. If we accomplish that, then we've really done something.
Do we really know what's going over here behind Speedway?
I know the approved plan.
Yeah.
There's one out there. It's a town center.
Right.
And it's, when you had a picture
So I have
of
a
it,
few-
similar to what was going up in that one section you said, and it has a roundabout stuff.
Oh, behind the speedway?
That's all that.
Is it a community or is it a commercial?
That's High Point.
High Point, it's a mix. It's somewhat, not, next, when you had up there, you had it. It's not bad, but it's a
So it's like
similar
an
place.
Easton type area?
Yes, and New Albany would be a better place. New Albany has that one section off of 62 and 62 and, what is it, 65 or something, where it comes up and down there, on all around here.
That's what we need in Etna. We need some place to be able to go like that.
Yes, and that is what is slated for up there.
When's he gonna start?
As soon as we get the water and sewer to feed it.
Yeah, water service put everything on a hold now.
We don't have the water to serve what we have.
I don't want to, you guys want me to tell you what the main plan is? I was kind of letting you guys go through it, I can give you a picture of that.
Yeah, I'd like to see what's going there.
I don't have
That would
it
be nice.
prepared, and I don't want to influence your decisions. I want you guys to do this plan, but if you need information from me, I can provide
That could
that.
influence
That's already
all.
done.
No,
That's
that's already
already-
happening.
Current things that are already out there, they're already set up.
I've seen the development map of what they have, where they put together, like, two-story buildings with housing on top and businesses on the bottom, and where it's sectioned off. Yeah, it's,
As you get farther away, the housing gets less dense until you put up to your single family
It's
house.
a nice plan.
Copy of this is the, it's called High Point, and this is the layout, and I have it because, this ties into Pike Street. Pike Street is not actually going to go all the way, the current plan. It will go partially into this development, something we can talk about later, but they recently approved this at they still have to do some engineering studies, but they recently approved this. They had like 5 or 6 variances, and they recently approved it at the Lincoln County Planning Commission. And so there's quite a few apartments, there's some single family, I think there's some townhouses, but you do have, as Jeff said, some outlots. Now, what those will develop, they'll probably be maybe a restaurant or something else.
We need more restaurants.
Yeah, they were designed for restaurants, like they weren't big box stores. They were more like a
How many
restaurant.
acres is that?
Yeah,
Jeff, how many acres?
I'm not sure, it's quite a few.
was it 104?
What's that?
Was it 104 acre?
I didn't see 150 or something.
220 acres, there'll be 12 outlots, there'll be 161 single-family lots at 55 wide, 110 deep, attached single-family 88, patio homes 94, total home sites 348.
There's a little bit of everything.
But the apartments, I don't know that the apartments are on here because I've heard various.
Are they putting any senior living there?
I do not know.
There is room for there if you want to designate one of the multi, what do you call it, park buildings like that, there, you could do that there.
I think.
But there's parking, there's walking area, and then you're going to tie into 40 and Pike Street here. That's areas where we're using High Street for the beautification process that we talked about, the wide get stuck. So it becomes part of that. And then, of course, there's housing going in north of 40, behind Smoke to the west, and then up off of Refugee, Hammer Chase.
What's the one that they're putting 2 to 3 acre lots on?
That was the golf course.
That's what it's.
Yeah,
that's
But anyways, and then the park district that we formed is all the middle part of that area across on the north side of 40 there. And so it was all be a tied-in type development that, you know,
See, that's what we need to develop. That plan needs to be the center, and that's how we figure it out.
so you want to take what's, I can get some drawings here, what's going on, what's planned to go in there, it's like, yeah.
And so-
That is our center.
Which
That would be our center and where we should go from there and how.
That's the big one. Then across the street behind McDonald's, I don't know if they're still going to do it. It's supposed to be a Harley Davidson place with a museum and a restaurant or two and some other things back here. It's just a nice.
Maybe 5.
Just put that back up.
Yeah, it failed, but they still not going to do it, but you know.
Sold the record.
That development though, it doesn't go all the way to the freeway, right? It kind of stops just past the speedway.
What's that?
The plan there.
That one that was, yeah, the one on the east side, yes, it goes all.
It goes all the way to the freeway now?
And all the way
Okay,
back.
I think the
to
original one I saw had,
Smokes, goes all the way there.
yeah. So the entrance where like the High State Barns is now, that will actually be like towards the entrance going into where the park will be.
They're going to reconfigure that so they don't.
I know what it is.
So Pike will basically, in some way or another, go straight across into that park,
Oh,
per
okay.
se.
Yeah, I think it's supposed to be that way.
Parks is so, it is.
This is on the speedway.
I know, but on the other end, is it almost gonna connect some things that will all be the side?
This will come out of Pike Street.
Are they still doing that, or are they busting that down?
There's the current traffic across the freeway.
Oh, yeah, the old one.
Going to that,
Yeah, stop that
You'll be
idea.
able to drive to there, but there won't be like a freeway. Okay, it's got to move.
But yeah.
Alright, because I remember Lucas, or Lincoln County originally.
I mean, I got to I don't want people, I don't want people.
Well, I mean,
But see, that's-
it is relative.
That would be very helpful for
Discussion,
us, yeah, right.
And the other thing is, do we know what's going between Palmer Road and 204 on 310? Has Fairfield County done anything with that other side of Palmer Road?
I haven't heard part of mine. I'll find out, but I don't know right now.
Yeah, it's that whole area. See where Dairy Queen is? It's that whole area. That project is this whole area.
I think it was better.
It was going to be an entrance like right in here. The main entrance is going to be right here somewhere. And then it's going to be all this back in here to, where's Spokes? Oh, this is the road. So all the way back to here and all the way up there and across and down. That's that whole area. And then the park, a lot of it is in that area up there. Next to Cameron Chase, where it says coffee. There's some housing going there down the back side of, down. So there's housing development going here, in this kind of block. There's another housing development down here. The township has purchased land through here and then back through all this through up through here.
So is there going to be like something to go across 40 to be able to go from one area of the,
From this side to that
Yes,
side.
that's an issue. I don't know how we're doing that yet. We haven't figured it out yet, but that's an issue.
That came up in Lincoln County planning, but you'd almost have to have a pedestrian bridge to go across.
that would be nice.
You know, like they have in Newark there, where they go,
Mhm.
that whole pedestrian bridge. But Mr. Sabatino thought that
Have to
Lincoln
start
County
pedestrian.
planning.
It's all paid for.
Didn't know details.
Yeah,
Right now.
that's all northern Florida. That's supposed to, that was, you know,
Behind the speedway.
this wants to be our centerpiece with our park and our residential housing. So it's kind of like it's all, we're gonna try to tie all that together.
Right, so
With-
that whole area is going
With
to be our
Etna
city.
proper itself being
So
part of that too.
we're going to call that our city. So we need to build everything else around our city. That's how we should look at it.
Right, tie in
Because you
this.
shouldn't just go, okay, this property over here, we're not putting housing, this property, we're not putting housing, but here's our city, and it limits these people down here.
Great amount of it, sounds like it's already cast in stone.
Nothing's built yet, but it has.
It's coming real soon. It's a done deal.
I'm telling you, we're so
Americans
many
on our side of the
houses
road.
down. I have made, I'm a real estate agent also.
Here?
I have made
That's a-
offers of
And that-
This is a
$100,000
church.
over on
All the way
houses
down
in
to the
Etna
freeway.
and
This?
Tasman.
Well, this is an old
And
picture.
lost them.
This is fairly old.
Yeah, probably.
Because like
It's-
McDonald's
it's
is here.
terrible.
So, you know, if that
You
tells
can't
you.
find
What's the west of there?
Where are you gonna
This?
Yeah. Right now,
That's
this
what
supposed to be
the apartments
the
are
Harley
for, and
Davidson
that's why
place
they're
back
building
here.
so many around Columbus.
That's the idea. How can they know?
Well, that's what they want you not to own it.
Sell my house. and
Good
give it to an
information, Jeff,
RV.
thank you.
No, it's great.
Yes, that'll help us with this.
Yeah, that we know, but nothing's built yet. And
No,
that's-
nothing's built, but at least we know what's going sort of where.
And there's another development that went,
Well, hopefully something
north,
else.
let's see. So if you go down southward, right there, back in this area here, there's development backs up to the golf course. There's another housing development in this area here. That's approved too.
Blacks Road and
And it's gonna try to match with Cumberland Trails, similar type of thing.
Blacks Road and York Road, are they still putting that solar panel place or wherever it was? Walk-ins and
Nobody's applied for anything, I know.
That's a,
That's,
a Harrison Township.
Harrison.
Yeah,
Yes.
that's right.
They're still putting that solar
Farm,
farm somewhere.
yes.
Did you know about that?
Judy's on there.
Yes, and so I go to all the trustee meetings and rant at each one about exclusionary zones. I don't think we want windmills and solar farms in Etna Township. So it's like, but it's up to the trustees to provide the resolution that will stop that from happening. And Senate Bill 52 is the one that has that in place right now. So, come to the trustee meetings and support that, because that's the first thing we have to, because a lot of these could be, they've been offered big money too for solar farms. And, and I told them last night at the meeting, just last week, the Los Angeles Times, which California's been into this business for 20 years of solar panels, and now they're reaping the, what happens afterwards. Now they don't, it's recycling, trying to recycle it. Well, $2 to $4 is what they're getting, they can extract from a panel, but it's a highly expertise of equipment and knowledge in order to do that. And so that kind of makes it not worth it. But, so now landfills are filling up with solar panels.
The wind turbines are one,
And those
they take
are
40
as bad.
40 years to pay off, and the life of them is only 20.
Yeah, and it's,
They burn up more energy than they ever
so
could.
the effects are filling landfills.
Yeah.
We don't need that.
That's wasting the energy that we're using now. They're using petroleum to build that stuff now,
Yes,
and we're paying higher prices for the petroleum because they're using it in a wasteful way.
right. And that you're suffering from that, all of that, yes. Okay,
So it's 7:30, there's one other specific thing. In your packet is a questionnaire, just one page. It's simple to fill out. I had another exercise that we don't have enough time in the next 30 minutes to pull it off. So next time, we're going to look at these maps and draw on them and look at the future land uses and where we think maybe the sensitive areas are, where we think residential is appropriate. We're going to still do that exercise. I think it's important, but it's going to take more than 30 minutes. And so
well, are we the only ones filling out surveys? I thought we were going to send out a survey to the.
we are.
Yeah.
Yep. So we're going to go over that next time as well. So I'll have that.
So what is the time frame for all of, what are we looking at?
10 months to a year.
The process, the whole process?
For them and for, I guess, when to send out the survey and to get those things back.
Yeah, so my goal is to have the survey out in September, if not earlier. And then I only like to leave it open for 2 weeks because you're either going to fill it out or you're not. I rarely hear people like, oh, I forgot to do that 3 weeks ago. I better do that.
Are you going to access the newsletter and put it in that newsletter?
Oh yeah, we'll work, whether it's a newsletter or a postcard or whatever. Yeah, we'll do a specific targeted outreach campaign for it.
What's a single family attached?
So a single family attached could be a townhome that's purchased, not rented.
Normally they share one
They share a common wall.
Yeah, there's double between schools.
Yeah, the duplex.
Are they all the same?
Yeah, they're all on that. Does anyone need a copy?
Nice, now,
You have to choose two.
I know, I know.
That's all you're allowed.
Can you give us an example of like
No more than
manufacturing? That's pretty
See,
much
being
like
a real estate
the
agent, I can tell you.
No,
Family.
Amazon would be
condo,
logistics
patio
or distribution. Light manufacturing could be Mike Shank Racing, Best Lighting, where actual something is being made, but not emitting smokestacks and, you know, your old, when you
Yeah,
think
that's,
industrial.
that's
Not a
a
steel
patch.
Right. Yeah, it's gonna be
And that's like-
value add, you know, well-paying jobs, maybe scientific in nature, but they're actually producing something, not distributing
I
something.
don't like question 4. I would like to circle all of them.
I know, that's why I did it, because I figured everybody would circle everything. And all this does is just
Oh,
helps
choose
me
two, I guess
understand.
that
what
She
we're-
choose 4.
I did actually. Okay.
It just, don't put your names on it, don't identify yourself. I just like to know, you know, what the group is thinking of. as a whole.
Yeah, but the first one, you can pick like 5 or 6 of them.
Yeah.
You can't, you want to pick two?
I don't want to pick 2.
You got it?
I have another question.
Yes.
This is
Um,
my first choice.
Retail, does that include big box retail? Big corporate retail?
Strip mall or,
Yeah.
that's what I said,
Yeah.
strip mall or
Yeah.
bigger?
Well, it could be big box.
I'm not good.
To go back to the survey, I'll draft the survey. We're gonna spend some time directly in this meeting, at least discussing some of the topics. So I wanna make sure I ask what you guys wanna know. You know, there's some generic things that I ask in every survey, but there's gonna be specific things that township. And I wanna make sure that if you want to know about it to inform your decision in this process, we need to ask. So we'll have that ready probably next meeting, at least the draft. And that'll go out to, online. Probably have it available here, have it available, hard copies of churches, some of the things.
Jim, will we be incorporating, but I don't know what the data side, housing trends or what, you know, not only what current generations want, but what future
Yes.
generations might want?
Yeah, I'll use a lot of the Insight 2050 data.
Okay.
I subscribe to it. It's called, well, it's not called MZ, it's called Light Source. It's a data aggregation company that just pulls data from where I can see, you know, trends and stuff like that, so absolutely. Sure.
For development design, is that more of intent as opposed to architecture?
Correct. The layout,
Like you were talking, so we can repurpose, be diverse?
yes. Yeah, so that's kind of what I wanted to go with tonight. Again, I wanted to do this, but I like the discussion. I think it's appropriate and well received, at least on my end. So next time, I'll have a little bit more information on the Transect stuff, go in that a little bit deeper. I'm going to change the map so you can actually see the colors a little bit better. I'm going to go over that as well. We'll color on that too, to make sure that the areas are appropriate. Because I've seen some changes just in my own mind now that I'm looking at it again that we need to make, and then we'll dive into the use as well, the use map and
We
start
should
coloring.
have something that shows the stuff that's approved.
Right.
There's some major development that's already approved, that we ought to really know about.
Right.
Yep, I've already started mapping all the gen districts of yours to Candy's point about that.
John,
Yeah.
that's what you do, lay out everything, give you a map of each one of those things. See what's-
And would it be possible, like you were talking about what's going on now, to maybe include stuff like 158 Kirkersville, that, so we kind of, even though it's on the outside of direct out of township, but we still have some bearing.
Yep.
That's like a mile and a half from your house.
Yep.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, I'll gather all that stuff.
Less
from
than that in
Laura and
mine.
John, from Harrison Township. I'll have all that.
Township boundaries could be a powerful thing.
If there's any questions, if you guys are laying awake tonight and think, man, this is awesome. I want to talk more about it. Yeah, let me know.
I'm gonna call you crazy.
You'll be the first.
I'll let you say that.
Yeah. I'll be up.
And for your information, too, another thing on this is on the west end of the township, talk of annexation and things like that. As part of our JED, that these former Pearlsburg, there is an annexation line that they're not supposed to annex anything going east. They pretty much annexed everything that they could do north of 70 for the most part. There's a little bit south of there that's still open, but not much. So they pretty much annex all the way that they're allowed to for the most part.
So Reynoldsburg can't annex any more of Etna Township.
Well, by the contract. By the contract, they're trying to get around that, that's correct. They mentioned a couple different properties. So, I guess, and they'll put whatever they want there. But I'll tell you right now, across on Summit, across Western Hills, they're putting, they want 50 or 35, 47-foot frontages on the road for these houses. But like parking around the back, and most of them were being sold to homes for rent.
They're a big
Homes
player.
for rent is coming into a lot of places because
They are.
my parents, we've been in Violet Township most of my life, so. And my brother does construction, so I got the insight on it. Behind Heron Crossing, which is over, I think it's Heron Crossing, it's either the one at Alt Road or the one at Tollgate. They have bought behind that development, American Home Rents, and they've already started building behind these $400,000 homes, these rental homes.
They're very aggressive.
Yes.
And
That's the kind of stuff, that's part of what we're, I think our goal is, let's stop that from here.
Well, you can't dictate ownership though.
Yeah.
So,
And that's part of the reason that I was bringing that up is because that, the city lets whatever in there, they don't care.
Right.
Or it's people in their city for growth. So we have to be, so when we go through this, we have to make it attractive, or save that, preserve that land for the landowner or
So
for
you
possible
need to
people
put-
coming in.
Since that's on Summit, and that's in our, that's in Etna, right? Or on the other side?
Well, you see there's a green, where is that, right? You see where that, what is it, says 149 foot right there on Summit Road?
on the big
On
map.
the big map, you look on a big map, and you'll see where Reynoldsburg comes out there, and it says, and the new school's right there, you'll see it,
Yeah, I see it.
149 foot in that field right there.
Yeah.
That field and the school are both annexed to it. So-
Well, don't tell the lady across the street that I just sold the house for $50,000 over.
Which one?
On Summit Road.
The one on the left? The one on the left side, that lot, so, well, that lot right there, they,
That was a
that,
5-acre lot I just sold across the street from Reynoldsburg High School for $50,000 over. And don't tell her that they're putting American rents right there.
no, they're down in that section, just below that on the left-hand side. So you go down where Summit is, you'll see green, that green block. On the south side of the green block, you'll see another block that goes all the way to 40, kind of. Like, if you think that's where those homes are going, it's at the top of that block. There's some condos on the west end, there's apartments on the south, where it's 40, then there's an archway in there that goes to some, what do you call it?
Yeah, right here's where the house I sold.
Commercial stuff along 40, but then the homes for rent are going on the east end of that block, so.
Yeah, let's go across from Cumberland Trail. It's no big rentals?
The one that they're trying to get built over there,
Yeah, right across from the entrance off
That's-
off of 310.
they're saying one thing with their high dot, basically it's an apartment, like, it's not long-term apartment, but it's like a, I don't know,
Extended
extended
stay.
stay type thing, which is the same thing as apartment. But,
But you can rent for like a month if you.
yes,
for work.
that's what supposedly it's about.
While we're asking those things, do we know what's going into the warehouse on Mink?
Which one?
The one
Warehouse on-
just, just north of
Lucas,
Main
that
Street?
That's all in that commercial.
It's on the east side, it's in that,
Yeah,
but
One south of the.
south of,
It's right next to
south
Amazon, right?
south of
right next to,
Amazon, right?
yeah, next to Amazon.
There's a developer, I don't know what's going in there, I have not heard.
No, and there isn't anything there, so it's like, It's the layered stuff. It's the people that come in and buy the property and then somebody else builds it and then, you know, and it's like, and so it could actually stay vacant for a
Yeah, I
while,
think it's, yeah,
Spec
for
building.
a long time, yeah.
Well,
Usually
Dollar
when they
General
start-
went over here across from, on Main Street, next to Americana, or not, by Edna. That one over, that stayed empty for a while is now Dollar General.
Warehouse.
Mhm.
So.
what, the core 5 one, south of FedEx.
But with some of the zoning things, one of the things that, at least the Amazon that's on Mink Road, that's on the, north end of Mink Road.
Right.
That, they were told by the zoning people, that they had to have, a serious setback, and they did that and put the mounding, and at least it's aesthetically beautiful. Well, or not, at least, I won't call it beautiful, it's okay. But the one that's going south of that, minimum setback, minimum. And so I wonder what happened between the Amazon zoners, when they went for zoning, and they were told, well, you have to make it aesthetically nice for the people that live across the street. But then when they went for, so the issue of the zoning people,
It's inconsistent.
it's ebbs and flows as to what's going to happen. One group will require, a larger setback, the other one gives them minimum, which makes it look not very
You're
nice.
talking about the Ashley Furniture Building?
No.
No,
That's
to
the
the
other
south.
way,
South of that one.
runs parallel, like Ashley and Amazon are perpendicular to me.
Yeah.
This one's parallel,
Okay,
and it's the south side of it. The next property is that little group of houses there between Main Street and that warehouse.
Can you get to it from the other corporate
Yeah,
place?
it comes to the
Not yet.
industrial park.
It comes through the industrial park, so that's the backside of that building.
Yeah, we wanted all the industrial park travel lots to go through the park, not come out on Main. But they wanted access on Main, it required them access on Main. So
You
that's
understand
a
what-
refugee, which they wanted to up out there, we told them no, that too. We don't want to run out on
Eddie makes
Estes
it
Park
worse.
Road.
So that's
we
the
allow
backside of it.
Yeah.
Small car traffic are supposed to come in that front part when they, but the trucks all had to go through the industrial park.
They would widen Main into a parkway coming down to Main Street. That parkway would be right against that warehouse, literally.
Oh, yeah, you're right at the front door.
Literally.
They wouldn't have enough frontage.
I mean, everything on both sides, houses, everything, would very much have to be literally, but it is awful close to Main.
I think when Intel comes and decides what corridor they're taking, that's when we'll figure out if it's Mink or, what is the other road?
Thornwood.
Thornwood. Where is Thornwood?
Next to the Cherry Valley.
Yep.
And they're already.
They're not gonna come all the way from there to get to 70.
No, it's not that.
It's not that far. And there's political push behind it.
Thornwood, how far east is it?
And they're already putting some money into that.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
That was when they took that light out at Speedway and Wendy's.
Yeah. And
Put
they're,
that real interchange.
the Cherry Valley Road Bridge is gonna be replaced next year, I believe. That curve's going away.
Cherry, that's north.
That's where
So you're
Thornwood,
going all the way out to north.
yeah,
There's
but that
also-
won't hit the 33 corridor that they're talking about.
You're right, absolutely. I don't understand transportation.
What's their purpose, to get down to 70?
Yep. East. So it's not west, it's eastbound truck
So
traffic.
they can take, say, 161 east.
Down, get off at
When you
the
go
Cherry Valley
there,
Road.
east.
You go right down, so. Because that jog of Cherry Valley Road Bridge is gonna be gone. And all, if you drive down there, you can see there's a lot of room for manufacturing.
there's also rail access out there.
Absolutely.
So, and there's already been talk of a couple different rail yards coming out there, which will actually expand that as well.
They hop
So,
up with the Heber bypass on 79.
Yep. Get off there,
It's the port authorities out there, so.
right, there's your push.
That's what it is.
All right, that's all I have.
Thanks, Jeff.
If you divvy up your, give me your surveys, we're just throwing in a pile, and then, the card as well. Thank you.
I think it's